There must be a mistake. There isn't. The lobby of the Tamin Grand went quiet. The attendant looked at the confirmation slip, then at her, then back again like the answer might change if he checked twice. Our records show a suite booked under Buckner Temi. Tonight. Prepaid in full. A smile. Polite. Dismissive. The system can be wrong. Temi didn't move. Then fix it. A hand closed around her elbow. Wrong move. She pulled free instantly. Don't touch me again. Now people were watching. Phones paused mid-scroll. Conversations thinned. The kind of silence that builds when something is about to go wrong or very right. The attendant tried again. If you'll just step aside. I'll stand here. Then her voice cut through the entire lobby. Clean, controlled, impossible to ignore. Either you confirm my suite, or you return my money. Here. Now. In front of everyone watching you do this. That did it. The room shifted. Staff exchanged looks. Security started moving in. And still she didn't budge. Like she had already decided how this would end. Then, footsteps. Not loud. Not rushed. But everything stopped. Security froze mid-step. The attendants straightened instantly. No announcement. No warning. Just presence. Jang Tamin stepped into the lobby. He didn't look around. Didn't ask questions. He walked straight to the counter, picked up her confirmation, glanced at it once and set it back down. You won't be working on this floor tomorrow. The air snapped. Process her check-in, he continued. Full suite upgrade. Silence. He turned to her. Calm. Unreadable. The hotel regrets what occurred. She met his gaze without flinching. I want a written acknowledgement before midnight. Itemized. A pause. Then. You'll have it. No argument. No hesitation. And no one in that lobby missed what just happened. She had just challenged the most powerful man in the building. And walked away like she made the rules. If you're already hooked, take 2 seconds to like the video. It helps more than you think. Because what happened next wasn't luck. And it definitely wasn't an accident. 3 days earlier. Lagos. Buckner and Company sat on the 4th floor of a mid-rise building in Victoria Island. Clean glass, practical furniture, no art on the walls for impression, just 12 desks, 12 people, and one small conference room where decisions happened that routinely affected budgets larger than the building itself was worth. Temi Buckner had built it from nothing. A single client. A rented desk in a co-working space. A proposal she rewrote 11 times before it was right. At 24, she had an idea and no resources. At 29, she had a team of 12, a portfolio across 3 continents, and a reputation in the events consulting world that meant people heard her name before they heard her pitch. She was not flashy. She didn't take meetings she didn't want. She didn't value opinions she hadn't already measured. She measured success by decisions, her own and the ones she influenced. Not by attention. Not by titles. Respect to her was never given. It was taken. Calmly. Consistently. Without permission. The Seoul trip was the biggest opportunity of her career. A high-profile Korean consortium, 3 companies, a combined portfolio that made her own look like a footnote, wanted an events and brand consulting firm for a major regional launch. Someone had recommended Buckner and Company. She didn't know who yet. She hadn't asked. It didn't change her preparation. She built the entire pitch in 4 days. Alone at her desk, eating jollof rice from a takeaway container at 11 o'clock at night, pulling together market data and case studies and a 3-phase strategy that she could defend from any angle. If she closed this, everything changed. The kind of change that didn't just grow a business. The kind that established one permanently. She boarded the flight alone. She only needed the room and 2 hours. Now back to the Tamin Grand. But this time we see everything. The glance at her passport that lingered a second too long. The way the senior attendant's smile arrived before her eyes did. The question, slipped in casually, almost gently, about whether she was perhaps looking for the service entrance. Temi didn't react. Not outwardly. She placed her items on the counter one by one. Portfolio. Confirmation. Passport. Business card. Each movement deliberate, controlled. The way you move when you need the other person to understand that you are not confused, not lost, not in the wrong place, and that you know exactly what they're doing. Inside, she wasn't panicking. She was calculating. She had seen this before. Not the faces changed. The pattern never did. The slightly too long pause before acknowledgement. The question that implied she might have made an error. The small, incremental pressure designed to make her feel like the easiest solution was to simply go away. She knew exactly how to become a problem that could not be quietly removed. She did not raise her voice until it was time to raise her voice. And when it was time, she didn't raise it out of anger. She raised it out of precision. She needed witnesses. She needed the room to see clearly what was happening and who was choosing to let it happen. That was not emotion. That was strategy. The guards arrived. She stood her ground. And above it all, on the mezzanine, one hand resting on the rail, Tamin watched. His eyes tracked her from the moment the guards appeared. Not with alarm. Not with the casual, passing interest of a man watching a minor disruption in his lobby. With something careful and focused and entirely still. He watched her plant herself. Watched her look at two large men in uniforms and not blink. Watched her chin stay level and her shoulders stay square, and her voice stay controlled even as the entire lobby shifted around her. Something in his expression shifted. And after the elevator doors close, Park Juno steps beside him. Is everything all right? Tamin said nothing. Still looking at the elevator. Jang Tamin was 36. The Tamin Grand was one of 11 businesses he owned above ground. What existed beneath it, Seoul's elite didn't say out loud. Not in full sentences. Not where it could be heard. He had inherited everything at 25. Not peacefully. There had been a period, 2 years that he never discussed and that no one who valued their position would bring up, during which he had made a series of decisions that were brutal in their necessity and precise in their execution. When it was over, he had what was his. And he spent the next 6 years turning something that had been built on violence into something that ran on control. Tamin didn't raise his voice. People adjusted theirs. He was not a man who was surprised. Not a man who watched anyone the way he had watched her. At dinner that night, his silence stretched longer than usual and his second-in-command noticed. Park Juno set down his chopsticks. You've been quiet since the lobby. Tamin picked up his glass. Set it down without drinking. Find out everything about the woman in the deluxe suite. Juno didn't ask follow-up questions. That was why he was still employed. Within the hour, a file. Temi Buckner, 29. Lagos, Nigeria. Founded Buckner and Company 5 years ago from a single client base. Current portfolio 3 continents, mid to large-scale brand events and consulting. In Seoul for a pitch meeting with a consortium that Tamin's network had quietly facilitated introductions for. Tamin read the file slowly. Then read it again. Send a bottle of wine to her room. 30 minutes later. A knock at room 1204. A staff member with an aged bottle on a silver tray. Card tucked beneath it. Compliments of the management. No name. Temi opened the door. Read the card. Looked at the bottle. Handed it back. Return it. With a note. The note was 4 sentences. Written on hotel stationery in her own hand. Clean and unhurried. She appreciated the gesture. She didn't accept gifts from people she hadn't chosen to trust. If the hotel wished to make amends, the written acknowledgement she'd requested would suffice. Have a good evening. Tamin read it. Set it down. Then read it again. The corner of his mouth moved. Just slightly. Just once. Morning came cool and gray over Seoul. Tamin was in the rooftop restaurant before she arrived. He had never eaten breakfast there. He ordered black coffee and waited with the patience of a man who had learned that waiting, done correctly, was its own kind of pressure. She walked in at 7:43. Scanned the room the way people do when they already sense something is deliberate, and found him immediately. She didn't react. She took a table near the window, set her phone face down and picked up the menu. He crossed the room and sat across from her without asking. She looked up slowly. I know your meeting isn't until 11, he said. She looked at him steadily. How do you know my schedule? My hotel takes care of its guests. A pause. Strange way of showing it. Something moved across his face. Not quite a smile. Close enough to be interesting. He was used to being wanted. Women who leaned toward him. Men who chose their words carefully in his presence. Rooms that rearranged themselves without being asked. He was not used to being studied. She looked at him the way she had looked at those two guards in the lobby. Like she was taking inventory, making a decision, and was in absolutely no hurry about it. He found he didn't mind, which itself was unusual. How long have you been in Seoul? He asked. Since last night. You know this. I'm making conversation. I know. She looked back at the menu. He watched her. Your company, Buckner and Company. You built it alone. She looked up. You read my file. Yes. And you're telling me this so I know you did. Yes, he said again. Without apology. She set the menu down. Looked at him directly. What do you want, Mr. Jang? Breakfast. A beat. And to know why you sent the wine back. I told you why. It was in the note. You don't trust easily. I don't trust without reason, she corrected. There's a difference. He considered that. What would give you reason? Honesty. Consistency. Not trying to manage me. She picked up the menu again. You're already failing one of those. He was quiet for a moment. Then? Which one? She didn't answer. She ordered her breakfast when the server came, ate with the focused efficiency of someone who treated meals as necessary rather than social, and when the conversation found its natural end, she didn't rescue it. She let it settle. Finished her coffee. Stood. Enjoy your morning, she said. And left. He sat there after she'd gone. Park Juno appeared at the table 2 minutes later, sliding into the chair she'd vacated. How did that go? Tamin looked at the door she'd walked through. Poorly. Juno almost smiled. Should I be concerned? Noah pause. Reserve the rooftop for this evening. Private. Tell the kitchen to prepare properly. That afternoon she ate in her room. He stood at the reserved table for 3 minutes. The candles were lit. The Seoul skyline stretched out gold and gray and enormous in every direction. He had used this setting before and it had never once failed him. He told his assistant to cancel it. Went back to his office. Sat at his desk and did not work for 45 minutes, which had not happened in longer than he could measure. That evening, he came to her door himself. No guards. No performance. No advance arrangement. Just him, standing in a hotel corridor for the first time in years, knocking on a door like an ordinary man who wanted something he wasn't certain he'd get. She opened it. Looked at him. Waited. I want to show you something, he said. The city. There's a place, not the hotel, not staged. No strings. She studied him. Unhurried. The way she did everything. That's exactly what a man with strings would say. He laughed. Short. Real. It moved through him before he could decide whether to let it. The kind of laugh that didn't ask for permission. And it surprised him, the feeling of it, the way it arrived without warning. She noticed. Something shifted behind her eyes. Not warmth, not yet. But recognition. Like she had filed the sound away somewhere carefully. Good night, she said. The door closed. He stood there for a moment. Then walked away slowly, hands in his pockets, and felt, for the first time in a very long time, that he had come second in something. He called the next morning. Dinner before you leave. I'll think about it. She didn't call back. But when they passed each other in the lobby that afternoon, she nodded once. The precise, measured nod of someone who had assessed a situation and not yet reached a verdict. He watched her walk away and felt something he hadn't felt since he was young, and didn't yet know how to disguise things. Impatience. The wanting kind. Every move he made she didn't react to. She evaluated. And somehow the evaluation, with no guaranteed outcome, was the most interesting thing that had happened to him in years. The meeting went well. Better than well. The consortium was engaged from the first slide. By the time Temi laid out her three-phase strategy, The lead partner was already leaning forward. Questions came fast, the specific pressured kind that meant they'd stop testing her and started picturing her in the role. She answered each one without notes. Precise. Unhurried. Completely herself. At the end, the lead partner smiled and sat back. We should also acknowledge the colleague whose recommendation brought you to our attention. He was quite insistent that Buckner and Company was the only firm worth considering. A warm pause. Tamin speaks very highly of your work. The room didn't change. But everything inside Temi did. She kept her face still. Nodded. Said the appropriate thing. Finished the meeting with the same composure she'd carried into it. Signed nothing. Left. In the elevator going down, she stared at the floor numbers and let herself feel it. Not the anger, not yet, but the specific cold clarity of realizing that a situation you thought you understood had a different shape entirely. He had known. Before the lobby confrontation. Before breakfast. Before the wine and the rooftop reservation and the knock at her door. He had been expecting her. Had known she was coming. Had said nothing. Had let her believe their connection was accidental when it was anything but. She called him from the car. He answered on the second ring. Did you know I was the consultant your team hired? A pause. The kind that meant he had anticipated the question and already decided how much truth to give it. Yes. She hung up. He called back. She watched the screen and set it face down on the seat. He called again. She turned it over and set it face down again. She extended her stay. Not for him. For herself. The consortium wanted a follow-up session, and she was not going to let a complication named Tamin cost her the biggest contract of her career. She was clear about that. Sharp and certain about it. She ate dinner alone that evening. Went through her notes. Ordered tea. Told herself the tightness in her chest was professional frustration and nothing else. At 9:17 there was a knock at her door. She opened it expecting room service. Han Suyin was not room service. She was elegant and composed and very carefully put together in the way that only certain women learn. The ones who've had to be exceptional just to be taken seriously in rooms built for other people. She smiled. Introduced herself. Then, without raising her voice or changing her expression, she began. Tamin loses interest. He always has. You're not the first woman he's pursued in this hotel, and you won't be the last. He will make you feel like you are the only unconquered thing in his world. And then the conquest will be enough for him, and it won't be enough for you. I'm telling you this because no one told me. Temi listened to all of it without interrupting. Then she opened her door wider, leaned against the frame, and looked at Suyin with an expression that was not unkind. If he's something to be warned about, her voice was soft. Even. Then maybe you should be asking why you're still standing here. Suyin's composure held. But only barely. I haven't even decided if I'm interested, Temi continued. You came to warn me about a decision I haven't made. A pause. That tells me more about what he does to people than anything you've said. Soft. Final. True. Good night. The door closed. Suyin stood perfectly still in the corridor. Then she turned and stopped. Tamin was at the end of the hall. He had heard everything. His face gave nothing away. But his eyes, fixed on the closed door with an expression Suyin had not seen on him in 3 years, gave everything away. She walked past him without speaking. He walked forward. And knocked. Temi opened the door. Looked at him. Didn't speak first. And he understood now that this was intentional. She never handed the first word to anyone. I didn't engineer the contract. His voice was even. The recommendation came before I knew it would be you. A colleague asked for a referral in the event space. I gave one based on your firm's track record. He paused. I should have told you when I realized it was you. She looked at him steadily. Why didn't you? He exhaled just slightly. I wasn't ready to explain why it mattered. Silence. Why did it matter? He held her gaze. I don't repeat myself. But I'm here again. He let that land. I haven't sent wine to a guest in 11 years. I've never come to a door like this. I don't know what to do with someone who sends things back and closes doors. and still makes me want to knock again. Another beat. But I'm here. And I'm being honest with you. Which is not something I do easily. Temi was quiet for a long moment. She looked at him the way she looked at proposals, searching not for what was being said but for what was being held back. She found nothing held back. I leave tomorrow. Noon, she said finally. I know. Dinner. Tonight. 1 hour. No strings I don't agree to. Yes. Immediate. The rooftop. The same one she'd refused. 1 hour became 4. Lagos. Seoul. What it costs to build something alone, not just financially but in quieter ways. The missed dinners. The friendships that thinned out because you were always working and eventually people stopped calling. The particular loneliness of being the most capable person in most rooms, because capability at that level tended to put distance between you and everyone standing beside you. He talked about inheriting his father's empire at 25. Not the violence of it, not directly, but the weight of it. Walking into rooms where people feared you before you'd said a word and wondering sometimes what it would feel like to be ordinary. To be unknown. To sit at a counter and order coffee, and have no one adjust their posture when you walked in. She listened without filling the silences. He talked more than he had talked in years. He noticed this. He didn't stop. She told him about her first client. A small fashion brand, a 3-day pop-up event, a budget that barely covered the venue. How she'd stayed up for 36 hours to make it work. How the founder had cried afterward and told her it was the best 3 days of her professional life. How Temi had gone home, sat on her floor, and decided quietly that this was what she was going to do with her life. Not because it was safe, because it was hers. He was still arrogant. She was still unmovable. But something settled between them, quiet and solid, the way foundations feel before anything is built on top of them. She left at midnight. He didn't try to extend it. She noticed that too, the restraint of it. The way he stood when she said she was going, didn't argue, didn't perform regret. Just looked at her like he was committing something to memory. Good night, she said. Travel safely, he said. She took the elevator alone. Morning. She packed efficiently. Checked out. Wheeled her bag through the lobby, the same lobby, and told herself she wasn't looking for him. He wasn't there. She noticed. Said nothing. Got into the car and watched the hotel disappear in the rearview window, and told herself the drop in her chest was tiredness and nothing else. 3 days later, a package arrived at Buckner and Company. No sender name on the outside. Cream-colored envelope, clean and heavy. She opened it at her desk. Inside, a formal written acknowledgement. The lobby incident itemized. The hotel's response detailed. The corrective action documented. Precise and controlled exactly the way he spoke. Beneath it a second page. Folded once. Separate. 1 line. Soul is better with you in it. Signed Jang Tamin. Temi read it standing up. Then sat down slowly and read it again. Then set it on her desk and looked at it for a moment the way you look at something you hadn't expected to move you. She picked up her phone. He answered before the second ring had finished. I got your letter. I know. The formal one was thorough. You asked for a thorough. The second page wasn't what I asked for. No, he agreed. It wasn't. A pause. Are you always this sure of yourself? Yes. She almost smiled. She could feel it trying to arrive. Next time you're in Lagos, dinner's on me. I'll be there Friday. She paused. That's in 4 days. I know. She laughed. Real. Uncontrolled. The kind that arrived before she could decide whether to let it. Moving through her like something breaking loose after being held still for too long. She hadn't laughed like that in front of anyone in longer than she could remember. On the other end, Tamin sat back in his chair. Said nothing. Let the sound exist in the space between them like it belonged there. He had closed deals worth hundreds of millions. Had walked into rooms that silenced themselves when he entered. Had been feared and admired and wanted in every configuration those words allowed. He had never sent a second page. He had never booked a flight to Lagos. And yet on Friday morning he did. If you made it this far, I've got a question for you. Did she handle that perfectly? Or would you have done something differently? Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this, like the video, subscribe and share. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.